So, hey everybody, welcome back. Today I'm doing a review of the Matrix Resurrections, which is the late sequel to Matrix Revolutions, and of course before that was Matrix something, and then the Matrix, of course. Um, but this being a movie that came out 18 years after the last two, which again, it's one of the late movies that has happened over the past few years, like Dumb and Dumber 2. Um, there's been others, but this is the only one that I can think of offhand. Sorry, but yeah, no, this new Matrix. So I think as a Matrix movie, it did fail in some areas because it didn't really feel so much as a Matrix movie, but more as a guy going through a lot of problems and finding out that his life reverted back to what it was. And I mean that in a different way. So at the ending of the Matrix number three, uh, Neo defeated the main antagonist of the trilogy, Mr. Smith, uh, in which he was helped by uh, I guess, kind of the robots leader to do that, which also created the Matrix. And he died in doing so. And Trinity died not long before that, being impaled through like some tubes that went through whenever they crashed. But learning through this movie, they had actually preserved both of their bodies because they promised Neo peace, and for the longest time, that they did actually maintain that peace until they needed a more electricity, more power to keep themselves alive, because that's how the robots feed. Um, if Neo and Trinity were placed too close to each other, they would actually go back to being sentient again. Not sentient, but back to understanding that they're alive and it actually in capsules. But if they were placed too far apart, they wouldn't generate enough electricity. But if they were close enough but still held apart, then they would be perfectly fine and captured. But going back into the movie again, so the movie, I think at the beginning, it had a really good plot, honestly, with Neo having his whole life turn into a game. Uh, he's a game developer, and the Matrix, the first three movies really were turned into a game that he made himself, with it being probably the biggest thing in the world. And even having Warner Brothers in the movie want to make a fourth game and talking about sequels and really being a fourth wall break for itself, because this is the sequel that not everybody asked for, but we still got, and they were kind of forcing it a little bit. I don't know too much behind the scenes, of course, but it's just my opinions. Really, though, I think after this is kind of when it gets a little fuzzy, because then they introduce the new characters and the new version of Morpheus, which I guess Neo subconsciously made in the Matrix whenever he was killed, where it's a mix of both Morpheus and Agent Smith. So it has both good and bad, but it's completely good, I guess. But I guess it has pros of what Mr. Smith could do and what he couldn't, I guess. I don't know. Uh, then we get around to the other main characters, which really see Neo as just this living legend that they wanted to save this whole time because they need him again, because he's back in the Matrix, and he's been having these flashbacks of his life being outside the Matrix from the first three movies. And he's a psychiatrist or therapist, has just been telling him, yeah, I- it's fine, it happens, it's just your subconscious telling you that you don't like your business partner, because he would see his business partners like mouth closed as his was in the first Matrix. And it turns out that his business partner is pretty much the reboot for Agent Smith. Uh, and the other guy being Agent Smith, and Morpheus is kind of the reboot for Morpheus. Uh, without actually having these main characters because Neo's and Trinity have actually been in the Matrix for 60 years now, which a lot of time has flown by. And after like they get taken out of the Matrix and you can see what they look like as humans, not digital. They're both like shaven completely. They look really old. I'm not gonna lie, but that's besides the point. Just thought I'd point that out. And plus, a few people in the theater, talking about it, so kind of changed it a little viewing experience. Um, Yada yada yada. They fight almost, but doesn't know that she's Trinity right now. She just knows of Trinity from the game, The Matrix, in the movie. But her real name in not real name, but her fake name is Tiff or Tiffany, and she has a husband and kids, which were used against her to try and trick her into thinking that she was never really in the Matrix, and that character in the game isn't based off of her, that it was never her, and that she's just this ordinary person now. In which Neo later confronts her multiple times at that and tries to convince her of who she really is. And in the end, she finally comes to her senses, which saves the day. But uh, really, most of this movie take out the digital universe, and it's not a Matrix movie. Like I think the same thing with Ghostbusters Afterlife, another late sequel. Uh, One thing that these two movies definitely had in common was that they relied heavily on the fact that you've seen the other three movies, or Ghostbusters case, two movies, main movies, uh, because they're constantly showing old scenes from the first, second, and third Matrix movies, and they're constantly referencing them, and it's really just constant throwbacks to, this character did this after you were gone, and you did this, which caused this to happen, and you're so great, and so on. You can't. I'm assuming that you'll understand what I mean, but uh, really, other than that, I think the Matrix Resurrections was mediocre. It wasn't a movie that I'm probably gonna rewatch a tons and tons of times, but I guess it's good for a first watch just to continue the Matrix, but it didn't really have to be a Matrix-based movie, other than Keanu Reeves and uh, I can't remember her name, but the actress that plays as Trinity. Uh, there's only two other returning characters, which were I can't remember her name now, but she was the black girl from the third and second movie, which gave her ship to Neo to go to the robot city. She made a return as her old self, and then we also saw the return of the little girl from the second and third movies that was talking to Neo, but now she actually helps get Trinity out of the Matrix and without killing her immediately and jacking her out of the Matrix, which I thought was really cool, the way they did that. But um, one thing that this movie does do good though is continuing their streak in the Matrix of, I mean, being the first, second, third movie, of not being really overly grotesque or violent, because of course it is a rated R movie, but uh, they didn't just go over the top like, okay, so rated R movie, it's a new age, so we can get away with all this, 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 and this. I think what they did was really nice and well crafted with that. But in terms of story and actual character development, I don't think it was that great. In terms of the Matrix, again, it was decent. I'd say a 5 or maybe even a 4 or 5 out of 10. Really, uh, I really wanted it to be higher because right before the movie had came out, I had recently done a movie marathon of the Matrix movies again, just to kind of rewatch and recap them. And I really like them. I do. This newest one, I think it's more just, of course, for money. I think the last one, the number 3, just ended off really well. And the way that the fourth one, this newer one, is setting up, it looks like they're gonna have another sequel. I guess it depends. It's probably just going to depend on how much money this movie makes or what the studio decides to do. But I think if they do another one, they have to do it right. And really, most of this movie wasn't based in the Matrix. It was kind of just saving Trinity. I mean, a lot of it was based in the Matrix. Don't get me wrong, but it could have very well not have been and just been the same movie. But I think this review is kind of short. It's going to be a little late upload, I think. Definitely. I, as usual, I do hope you enjoyed. If so, uh, maybe leave a like or subscribe. That's up to you. And then, if you have any suggestions or comments on what I think, or if you have your own thoughts, feel free to leave them in the comments. Thanks.